Hello, and welcome to Adapter Parish, episode 41, The 10 Commandments. Before we start this extra special Passover episode, as always, let's talk about our next episode. Apparently, we're all about holiday-themed episodes over here, and with Mother's Day coming up, we wanted to make sure we covered something appropriate. So on Tuesday, May 7th, we'll be taking a look at a classic tale of mothers and daughters. We read Mary Rodgers' original 1972 novel Freaky Friday and watched 3 feature-length versions of this body swap classic. We watched Jodie Foster and Barbara Harris switch in 1976, Gabby Hoffman and Shelley Long in 1995, and finally Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis in 2003. I'll just say, this one ended up being way more fun than either of us expected. That's in 2 weeks. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections that you'd like to hear on the show, remember to email adapterparishcast@gmail.com or tweet at us using the AdaptCast hashtag. You can find all of the show notes from this and other episodes at adapterparishcast.com. And with that, on with the show. The story of Moses, the literal book of Exodus, and the 10 Commandments. Hello, and welcome to Adapter Parish, a podcast about adaptation. My name is Jeremy Latour.
And I'm Arielle Lipshaw. And on this holy day, we have gathered here to talk about God.
I mean, if we handled our schedule correctly, happy Passover, everybody.
Yay!
And soon Easter?
I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know anything about Easter.
They're always around the same time.
Well, that's what always confused me as a kid, because people said the 10 Commandments was an Easter movie because it was always on TV at Easter.
Right.
And I didn't understand why it would be an Easter movie, because it's not. It's a Passover movie. They're just at the same time, coincidentally.
Yes.
Yes.
Because the Last Supper is a Passover Seder.
That's right.
And that actually, I think, is a really good start, because there's lots of things that we're going to say, this is how it happened, when really, probably not even close most of the time.
I mean, I want to say something. I had to read the Bible for this episode. I didn't enjoy it, and I skimmed a lot. So if any of you out there are better at your Bible than me, you may have some quibbles, because I definitely skipped like fully half of Exodus, where they were giving like design specifications for the Ark of the Covenant. That was literally half.
I found the design specifications more interesting than just the laws.
Yeah, I skipped the laws too.
Because it's a lot of, I mean, at least design specifications, I certainly can appreciate furniture, but I feel like when it comes to the laws, like, I don't own livestock, so
Yeah.
it doesn't really...
And you don't have a brother, so there's no chance of you lying with his wife.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's totally fine.
Yeah.
I kind of skimmed those parts.
Well, my favorite thing...
I was going to say at the beginning, 2 Jews, but we're actually 2 bad Jews.
Yeah. My favorite thing about the design specifications, actually, is it's in 2 parts. One is God telling Moses how to build the Ark of the Covenant in excruciating detail.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not joking. And then Moses goes back to the people and repeats what God told him, like almost as if there was a word minimum for this book, Exodus, because literally the first probably 92 minutes to 2 hours of any one of these movies that we're about to talk about is in the first 3 pages of Exodus, but probably 25 pages are devoted to, again, like design requirements for the Ark of the Covenant.
Well, I have a theory about that.
Yes.
So my theory is this. So as we all know, Moses wrote the books.
Yes.
He wrote Exodus.
Yeah.
Which always confused me. I mean, I shouldn't be confused, because that's what people say and that's what we know. But it's confusing because part of it is written in the past tense, and also Moses is dead at some point. So I guess, but Moses wrote them.
Did he? I thought God wrote them.
Well, no, Moses wrote them, because God doesn't write. Man writes, but it's from the word of God.
I see.
So Moses wrote the Bible.
The whole Bible?
Yeah, the whole Bible. And then he was going to God.
But he dies in it.
He was going to God. So Moses wrote the Bible, and he was going to God, and he said, "Here's my draft." And God said, God is the producer at this point.
Yeah.
And says, "All right, I have some notes. I don't understand. So I get that you have me telling you how to build the ark, but At no point are you telling everyone else how to build it. So I guess as an audience member, I'm not really sure how they know how to build it.
Gotcha.
And Moses is like, no, God, like, they're gonna get it. Like, people reading this will understand that I went to tell them. Just because it happened off screen doesn't mean that they won't understand. And God's like, no, I mean, here's the deal. This is my project.
Yeah.
And so you're gonna do these notes or I will find someone else. And Moses wanted the job, so Moses wrote that in.
The only thing I could think about the whole time I was reading this was, so I don't know, those of you who are Jewish will know how Torah portions work when you have your bar mitzvah.
I'm so glad you brought this up. I wanted to talk about this.
But basically you're assigned whatever reading is scheduled. The readings are scheduled by the week of the year. So over the course of the year, you go through the whole 5 books of Moses, one chapter per week. So whoever's having their bar or bat mitzvah that week is assigned whatever chapter, and they have to study it and read it. But then generally, at least where both of us went to Reform synagogues, the bar or bat mitzvah child has to write a speech that is basically the sermon that's based on that week's reading. And so like the really lucky kids like get the 10 commandments and get to have their speech inspired by the 10 commandments. But I'm just thinking about like the kid that got like, and thou shalt cut a piece of wood, and the inches of that wood shall be 3, not 5. No more shall they be 2, but 3. And the color they shall be painted shall be purple, not blue.
Well, we have the same Torah portion.
Yeah, you and I. Yes, that's a crazy coincidence. Jeremy and I have birthdays very close together, and we have the
but
same.
A year apart.
A year apart, and we had the same Torah portion, which is the first chapter of Numbers, Bamidbar.
Which is the most boring of the books.
It's a list of names. It's just, and so begets so-and-so, and so-and-so begets so-and-so.
Do you remember what you wrote
Yes.
as far as like how you could kind of,
Oh.
because you've got to write it and you've got to say, I really liked this Torah portion
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
like, what did you say?
Do you want to know what I said? I
Yeah.
had the best Torah portion I had the best speech in the history of our synagogue.
Okay.
Because I went on a feminist thing. I talked about how every single name in my Torah portion was a man's name, but that there are so many strong women from Jewish history, and why don't we hear about them?
You did a better job than me.
I did a really good job.
I think I don't think I said this specifically, but in my mind, what I said was like, you know how when you put a stereo together, it's good to have instructions? I really appreciate that the Bible has instructions.
which like would follow you into life, because you really appreciate like a well-written set of IKEA instructions.
I love it.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
really, like, both of these were really shadows of things to come. If your Torah portion was the design requirements of the Ark of the Covenant, please let us know.
I really want to hear that. And if anyone can literally provide like a copy of their speech, I will read it on this show. I swear to God, I will.
One of the kids had in my group, because like I was at the beginning of Numbers, which means that the kids who were in the weeks before me had the end of Leviticus.
Yeah.
So one kid, I swear I remember this, literally had like his entire Torah portion was like sexual purity laws. And he was like, what speech am I supposed to write?
People's grandmas come to bar mitzvahs. Everybody's grandma's there.
I also want to be clear that when you read the Torah portion, it's in Hebrew, so nobody actually understands it, but then you have to stand up there and explain it in English.
I just think, like, I'm imagining this in front of, like, a room full of, like, middle to old-aged Jews.
Yeah.
Famously, like, I would say second place in terms of their sexual repression.
With a 12-year-old with, like, a very faint mustache explaining.
13. Clearly
Like,
13.
yes.
So let's talk about
Oh, God.
Exodus.
Oh,
We haven't
my
even
whole
mentioned the
entire
book.
childhood.
The book of Exodus.
Yes, we read it.
Is the source material. I want to get something out of the way. Moving on kind of to talking about the material itself. There is, I think, one thing we should say we are not going to talk about. I mentioned it before.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make clear that the way we view this book and the way we're going to talk about it in this episode, the book of Exodus is not history.
Uh-huh.
The book of Exodus is a religious text that is a parable that teaches us things about how we should treat each other. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay, it is not history.
No.
So
The Jews didn't build the pyramids. I don't know if anybody really realizes that.
I looked up the timeline. So the pyramids are literally like they're 1,000 years older than the time,
this.
quote unquote, the time of Moses. So anytime I talk about like the time of Moses, I'm putting quotes around that.
Yeah.
Because like the Jews were never slaves in Egypt. The most I could find was that.
Wait, you just threw that out there. They were never slaves in Egypt. We were brought up to believe the Jews were slaves in Egypt.
We were brought up to believe that the Bible says that the Jews were slaves in Egypt.
That's fair.
But like, here's the deal. If the Jews were slaves in Egypt, then this is what I don't want to talk about.
Okay,
like,
all right.
I don't want to talk about like the proof as
we're just putting this out there as the basis on which this episode is based.
So like when watching all these movies, like when I'm reading through like other people's negative reviews of some of the things that we watch, there are people who said, this is not accurate. This is not what happened. Like, okay, probably none of it happened, but it's a really great story that teaches us lots of things about how we should treat people, which is what a religious text is.
Which is why we actually went back and read the stupid thing, because we felt like we should treat it like any original source material.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
anyway.
as a story, I have some quibbles.
Yeah.
Like just as a piece of writing. The pacing is super weird.
It's so weird.
Like so much time, no time is spent on things that happen, and tons of time is spent on just people talking.
Yeah.
And I say people talking, specifically God talking to Moses.
Yeah.
And Moses then talking to everybody else.
Yeah.
But like stuff happening is crazy. How much happens in just the first page?
In the first 2 pages, he's already been cast out of Egypt.
Should I actually say what the plot is of the book
so.
of Exodus?
I don't think we should assume, because we made some assumptions about the Godfather that were not correct. So
you're right. I think fewer people know the book of Exodus than the Godfather.
Yeah.
We should talk about this.
I think that's true. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Keep it short.
I'm going to keep it super, super short. Long ago in Egypt, the Hebrews were all slaves in Egypt. And Pharaoh at the time was like, you know what? I think all these Hebrews are going to rise up against me. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to teach them a lesson. So I'm going to have my soldiers go out and kill all of the baby boys. So that's bad, right? Okay. So there was this one woman who said, well, I've got a baby boy, and fuck you, you're not going to kill my baby. Here's what I'm going to do to keep him safe. I'm going to put him in a basket and put him in a river and send him up the river so that he will be safe.
This is what happened.
And the baby is then found by like an Egyptian princess who says, oh, cool, a baby. This is my baby now. I'm going to raise it. And all kinds of other stuff happens, like basically his older sister followed the basket along the river, and as soon as the princess finds the baby, she jumps out of the reeds and goes like, oh, hey, did you find a baby? You're probably going to need a nursemaid for that baby. I know a lady who can do that for you. And so, like, the baby went to go live with his actual mom for a time, but was raised as a prince of Egypt.
Yes, correct.
And because he was found in the reeds, she named him Moshe, or Moses. He grew up, and then a bunch of stuff happened really, really quickly.
Yeah.
And he's a prince of Egypt, but he sees that a slave is being beaten by an Egyptian, and he goes, fuck off, and he kills the Egyptian, and everyone's like, you gotta get out of here. So he gets banished to the desert, and he finds out about the fact that he was a Hebrew.
Yes.
Like, he finds out about
At some point
this.
in all of this, he finds out.
This is like page 1.
Yeah.
All of this is happening on the first page.
Yes, I'm saying, yes, this is all page 1.
He meets some people, he gets married, and then he meets God. And God says, you got to go back to Egypt and you have to free my people.
Yes.
You have to free your people.
God takes the form of a burning bush in this instance.
Right. And he finds out God's name, and if you say God's name 3 times, he shows up. That's how this works. I believe it's Beetlejuice rules. And then he goes back to Egypt, and he talks to Pharaoh, and he says, hey, Pharaoh, guess what? You know me, because you're the new Pharaoh.
Yeah, they all know who he is.
Yeah, you know me because I was a prince of Egypt.
This is like 10 years later.
But now I'm back, and you've got to let all the slaves go. And Pharaoh says, fuck you, no. And
I don't wish to.
And he says, no, here's a magic trick. And his staff turns into a snake. And then Pharaoh says, I got people who can turn staffs into snakes, and they make snakes, but his snake eats those other snakes. But still, that's not enough.
You're getting really bogged down in the details here.
I fucking love the story of Passover.
Okay.
I love it. Passover is my favorite holiday. I look forward to it every year. There's nothing that I love more than going to a room, eating a shitload of food, and having a whole bunch of like middle-aged Jews singing Go Down Moses in the style of Paul Robeson. None of it is in the right register.
I want to be clear that this is your family tradition. No one in my family ever sang Go Down Moses.
I don't understand. I thought everyone did that.
No.
I thought every family goes through this.
We sing Dayenu. That's
No,
an upbeat song.
We sing Dayenu too. I love
know.
Dayenu, but there was always, and occasionally now as an adult, I have had the chance to be the one to actually lead the Seder.
Yes.
And if any of you haven't been to a Passover Seder, they are the best. They are fantastic. But I was sometimes in charge of leading the Seder, and if it ever got to the point where Go Down Moses came up, I would always skip right past it, because if you get a whole bunch of like middle-aged Jews in a room, white American Jews who are singing it like Paul Robeson, I don't know, that feels to me super racially insensitive, because it was really important to a huge segment of the population who were literally like I want to go back. We don't have evidence that the Jews were actually slaves in Israel.
We just made this shit up.
Do you know what we do have evidence of? That black people were slaves in this country, and they're the ones who wrote this song.
Again, fairly recently.
Yeah, like not that long ago. I love Passover. Okay, so anyway, then Pharaoh says, no, I'm not letting them go. And Moses says, yeah, well, God's going to set some plagues on you. And then there's a whole bunch of plagues.
10 plagues.
10 plagues, a bunch of things happen. And every single time Pharaoh says, I'm not going to let them go. What are you doing? No, of course not, because there are slaves and we're not going to do it. And then the final plague happens, which is the death of the firstborn.
Yes.
And God kills the firstborn child, the firstborn son of all the Egyptians.
Well, right. So in the Lipshaw family, this was always the big argument about the logistics of the death of the firstborn.
Oh, firstborn versus firstborn son.
Right, exactly, because I am the oldest of 3, but I am the only sister, and I have 2 younger brothers. Mm-hmm. So our debate was always, is it the firstborn? My brothers would point out firstborn, so you, Ariel, you're gone. And I would come back at them and explain, no, firstborn son. So my brother Matthew is shit out of luck. My brother James is always fine.
He's fine.
Yeah.
He's totally good. Okay. So there's one thing I want to mention right now. Okay, sorry. Let me get back to telling the whole thing. Death of the firstborn. One of the kids who's killed is Pharaoh's son, and he's like, "Fine, go." And they all go, and they get to the Red Sea, and that's when Pharaoh says, "No, I want them back." So he goes to chase them with the rest of the Egyptians, and they're gaining on them. And God sets down like a fiery pillar to stop the Egyptians, while Moses is looking at the ocean going, I don't know what to do. And then God parts the Red Sea.
Parts the waters.
All the Jews, all the Hebrews walk through it.
Yeah.
And when they get to the other side, the Egyptians then follow through. And while they're at the bottom of the Red Sea, God lets the waters come back together and all the Egyptians drown.
Yes.
And now the Hebrews are free. And then...
I want to be clear, we're now 5 pages into the book of Exodus.
Oh, and then the rest of Exodus is super, super easy to explain. They wander forever, and I'm going to say 3 things happen. Here are the 3 things. Moses gets the 10 commandments.
Yes.
The rules for living for all people.
Yes.
Number 2, they fight some people. There's some battles.
They do some battling.
And then number 3, they wander for 40 years before they find their homeland.
And Moses dies and is not allowed to enter the homeland.
Right, because he's the most humble man.
No, it's because he doubted God for a while, a couple times, so he is not allowed to enter the land of Canaan.
So just from pure literary criticism, how do you feel about the story of Exodus?
I mean, I think as we've seen, it's certainly possible to extract the parts of it that are interesting and place them together in a manner that is either pleasing or not pleasing. Mm-hmm. But as source material, it's kind of like the Silmarillion.
A bit.
It's, I guess this is probably the first time anyone said the Bible's like the Silmarillion. Probably mostly people say the Silmarillion is like the Bible.
I just want to bring up one thing in particular that I'm literally holding. I'm holding the Tanakh that I got for my bar mitzvah right now.
And has not been opened since.
What? No, I'm a good Jew. I know all this stuff. So basically, this is the part that got me that I was so mad about.
Okay.
Because there's all kinds of stuff that are in. So for those who haven't celebrated Passover, when you do Passover, you read the Haggadah. And the Haggadah is the story of Passover.
It's a very simplified version of this.
Super simplified story of Exodus. But it generally includes lots of things that are in like biblical criticism and extra stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't include, for example, the forcible circumcision of Moses' son as God is coming after him to kill him.
Yeah, no, that's not in it.
That's not in it.
And there's all kinds of stuff that is. Like, some of my favorite parts of the Haggadah are 100% not in Exodus.
Yeah.
And I was very sad to see that they were not in there.
I'm sorry.
Because they were things that, like, made me feel a little bit better about the fact that God killed all the Egyptians
Yeah, I think you have
in
to
the
read
Red
the
Sea.
I think you have to read the Talmud to get that stuff.
So this is the part that kind of made me mad.
Yeah.
Because it's not in any of the Haggadahs.
Yeah.
Because if you're looking at it from a story perspective, there's basically like three main characters.
Yeah.
There's Moses, Pharaoh, and God.
Right.
Those are the three main characters. In some versions of the story, God can't control Pharaoh. Because if God could control Pharaoh, then he could just make Pharaoh let the people go.
Yeah.
So the whole idea is that God is sending Moses because he needs Moses to go because he's not going to do it.
Yeah, it's like, why couldn't Gandalf just send the eagles to Mount Doom to drop in the ring?
And that's what I've always thought.
Right.
I've always thought that because God gave us free will.
Right.
Like, that's the thing we know. Okay. And the Lord said to Moses, when you return to Egypt, see that you perform before Pharaoh all the marvels that I have put within your power. I, however, will stiffen his heart so that he will not let the people go. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my firstborn son. I have said to you, let my son go that he may worship me, yet you refuse to let him go. Now I will slay your firstborn son. This is on page 5 of Exodus.
Yeah, God's a jerk.
I got so mad. Like, I've been joking for years about Old Testament God being kind of wrath and vengeance and everything. I didn't know. He could have.
No, he actually was.
Pharaoh could have let them all go immediately, but God said, no, I'm going to stiffen his heart. And throughout all of the story, it keeps referring back to Pharaoh was about to do it, but then his heart was hardened by God and then didn't do it. So what the fuck? And I'm saying this purely from a literary standpoint.
I mean,
just a story criticism.
My interpretation is that the point is to increase the faith of both Moses and the Hebrew people by demonstrating miracle after miracle. Because if any one of those had convinced Pharaoh, it would have been great, except they probably wouldn't have been so successful as a people because they would not have seen so much evidence of, God.
I don't like it.
That's fine. You don't have to like it.
Before we get into our first version, I just have one thing to say.
Okay.
About why I love the story of Moses so much.
Why?
And why I love Passover.
Oh, okay. Yes, I know what you're going to say.
What am I going to say?
It's because of Superman.
Moses is Superman. I want to be very clear about this.
Is Moses Superman or is Superman Moses?
That's what I meant to say. Superman is Moses. So as a Jew who likes comic books and superhero movies, Superman is my dude. He is my number one. And I feel like what I see constantly is people have this very simplistic interpretation of Superman, which is that he is who? Who is he an allegory for?
Jesus.
Exactly, right? And I kind of get that because he's the son of someone who has all these powers and he was sent to save us, right?
Yeah.
I get that. The thing is, Superman was created by two Jewish kids. He's not Jesus. He's Moses because Krypton was going to blow up. And his parents said, we need to save our son, so we're going to put him in a spaceship and rocket him off to Earth so that people we don't know can raise him, and we don't know if he's going to be okay, but we know he'll die if we don't do that. And then he grows up and finds out he has powers, and then he helps people. He's Moses.
Yeah.
I want to be very, very clear about why I love Moses. This is the only time I get to talk about it. So I'm going to talk about it now, and now we can move on. So would you like me to now hand things over so that you can talk about how we're going to handle everything today?
Yeah, totally. Okay, so we're going to do things in a little bit of an unusual order because a lot of the times we go chronologically, but we didn't want to go chronologically for reasons that will soon become clear. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of start with what we assumed most people would be familiar with, which is the 1956 The Ten Commandments, starring your most hated actor and mine, Charlton Heston.
A lot of people like Charlton Heston.
I think this podcast knows where I firmly stand on Charlton Heston. We have covered him before. And then we sort of divided the rest of the movies that we saw into three other categories. We thought the Ten Commandments was kind of outside of classification because that just is. Mm-hmm. I am what I am.
Right.
But we saw a couple of things that
this
were...
is so blasphemous. If we've lost any of our audience due to blasphemy, I apologize.
Sorry.
I'm glad the rest of you stuck with us.
It's all right. It'll get better. We saw several things that were bad.
Yep.
So we're going to talk about the things that were bad. And then we saw a couple things that were strange.
Weird, a bit weird.
A bit weird, a bit unusual, kind of out there. And we saw one movie that was extremely good.
Yep.
And we're going to talk about that last. We're going to save it for last. So that's the order we're going to talk about things in. Would you like to talk about Charlton Heston's The 10 Commandments?
I think I'd seen it once.
Yeah.
I've seen it all the way through once.
Yeah.
Did you know this? It is very long.
Yes. I'm not sure I'd ever seen the last half hour to 20 minutes because I used to watch it on TV. But of course, when they show it on TV, like as a kid, right, it had commercials. So I'd always fall asleep before the end because it was on from like 7 to midnight.
It's such a long movie.
I don't know that I'd ever seen the actual
like,
end before.
It's the good book. It's not that good.
Yeah, it's not that good. Okay. So I want to get something out of the way.
Please.
This is going to come up again and again and again and again in all of these. So I'm just going to mention it for the first, but by far not the last time. The casting in most of these is batshit insane.
Uh-huh.
And various movies that we watched did various things about the fact that this is a movie that takes place in Egypt, which is an African country.
Mm-hmm.
So there's sort of a range of how this was dealt with, I would say, in terms of the casting. 1956 definitely did it in the most traditional manner, which was sort of, no, all these people are white. This is a white person's story.
When you say traditional, you mean traditional for Hollywood?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, traditional in like, this is what Bible illustrations look like.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil anything for the future, but it's actually less problematic than some of the things we're going to talk about later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we have a bunch of white people playing people that were born and raised and grew up in Northern Africa. I just want to point that out. Just really right off the bat, this is going to come up again.
So all that being said, this is a good movie.
It's not bad.
Like, it's a good movie.
Yeah.
It's good. It's very long. It definitely does something that I find with a lot of these is that they're very self-important.
Yes.
Because in their mind, you know, we're doing the Bible.
The Bible.
So we need to honor God by making art that is befitting God's grandeur.
Yes.
Right? Which if I were a biblical scholar, I would probably take a step back and go, yeah, okay, the Bible's up here.
Mm-hmm.
All your movies are like, fine. That's totally fine. Maybe you don't need to take yourself so seriously.
Yeah.
Because we have the Bible.
Yes, this movie does take itself very seriously.
Like, so seriously that Cecil B. DeMille, the director, comes out in front of the audience at the very beginning, steps between curtains and says, hello, everybody. Well, I'm going to talk to you about this movie we got going on. Just so you all know, I made a fucking long movie. Because it's the Bible.
It's very important.
Very important. And you're going to watch the whole thing because it's the Bible.
Yes.
And just before you think that any of this is inaccurate, we met with lots of biblical scholars of both religions, Christianity and Judaism, to make sure...
Both religions of the world.
to make sure that this was accurate. No one else cares about Moses. There's no other religion that cares about Moses at all. Just Christianity and Judaism.
And the Jewish influence is pretty minimal. There is a rabbi in the credits who I'm convinced the only scene he consulted on was there is a scene where there's a Seder.
I have so few notes about this movie, and this is one of them.
Okay, go ahead.
So, like, okay, they have a Seder, and it's when God is about to kill the firstborn, and so they're all like, Moses is with his, like, real family, and there's, like, a little Hebrew kid, and he says, like, why is this night different than all other nights? Which is the thing you say at Passover. I love Passover. So, and... like, why do we eat a bitter herb? Why are we eating a bitter herb? And then Moses said to him, Moses says the thing that you say at Passover in the Haggadah.
20th century.
Which is, we eat the bitter herb to be reminded of the bitterness of our hardships of slavery.
You
right?
don't need to be reminded.
You don't need to be reminded. Like, it's happening right now. This is happening
it has
currently.
not yet ended.
It's so frustrating.
Okay.
It would be as if in the Passion of the Christ... that someone said, I just want to make sure that we have a wreath on all the doors. And someone said, why do we need wreaths on the doors? And they said, so that Santa knows what houses to stop at. just because Jesus has something to do with Christmas doesn't mean that Christmas is depicted in the Passion of the Christ. Was that fair?
Yeah, it's fair. It's really funny. I'm just picturing wreaths on all the doors as the angel of death is passing over.
All the Egyptians got coal in their stockings. So basically, okay, this movie is like super Christian.
Yeah, oh
Let's
my God.
get it out of the way. Like, it's really, really Christian, which is weird as a Jew to watch something based on the Old Testament, or as we refer to it,
The Bible.
The Bible, just the Testament. Like, it is crazy how Christian it becomes.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is in the story that there's a prophecy that like one of the Hebrews is going to rise up and save everybody.
Right.
But whenever they talk about it in terms of Jesus.
Yeah.
It's very much, it's a signifier.
Right, like people talk about Jesus as the savior,
Yeah.
but they mean spiritually, and in this case the savior quote of Israel is meant literally, like he is literally going to take their bodies to another place. But it's sort of referred to in this more spiritual way.
Right. I want to tell this story right now that like happened to a friend of mine who like had a coworker who was very religious and very Christian and wanted to celebrate Passover, and they wanted to learn more about it. And they said, "Oh, you're a Jew, so can you tell me more about it?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure. Like, yeah, I would love to tell you more about Passover. It's super, super cool. I love Passover." And they like found a Haggadah and did Passover, and they came back to them and they said, "Oh my God, I love it. I love the story so much. I love the symbolism in it. Like, I love the way that over the course of the Seder, you have to drink like 4 cups of wine, which obviously like symbolizes the blood of Christ, and how matzah has all the holes in it, which symbolizes like the stigmata, the holes that were driven through Jesus's hands when he was put up on the cross." And my friend described this to me, and their reaction was just, I didn't know what to say to this person. It's so hard to say to someone who tries to take this story and make it about something that hadn't even happened yet about that.
Right.
Here's the thing that like, I am not a biblical scholar. I don't feel like there's a lot of things I can stand up and say, this is absolutely the case. But here's something I can say. The book of Exodus has nothing to do with Jesus. Nothing. Do you know what does have to do with Jesus?
Jesus.
The whole New Testament.
Yeah, you guys get a whole second half.
All of it. It's all about Jesus. But the Old Testament is not about Jesus. Now that that's out of the way.
Can we talk about this movie now?
This movie's good. It's good. It's long. It's super, super long. What do you think of all the actors that are in it?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about.
Like, they are, 99% of them are just white people.
Yeah, well, this movie introduces one character that I don't think is in any other version, which is the character of Nefertiri, the beautiful Egyptian princess.
I mean, she's in the other ones.
Well,
like,
she's just Ramesses' wife, but she has no relationship with Moses.
Yeah.
This is like, the whole thing is, for whatever reason, blah-de-blah, hand-wavy reason, she can only marry the next pharaoh. And there's some dispute about whether Moses or Ramesses is going to be named the next pharaoh. She really wants it to be Moses because she wants to marry Moses.
Yeah.
It's not Moses, it turns out, because it's discovered that he's the son of a Hebrew and he kills the Egyptian and all the stuff happens.
All the stuff I said.
And this is also the only one where Moses, like, after that happens, but before being banished from Egypt, goes into slavery. Like, after they discover he's a Hebrew, they're all like, okay, well, I guess you're a slave now. And he's just like living there, but not in the palace anymore, like as a slave.
Well, he's like, Charlton Heston's Moses is like the most noble Moses.
Oh, he's very noble, yeah.
Not humble.
Yes.
Like he's definitely noble in the way where he's saying, look at this noble thing that I am doing.
Yes, he never does the sort of why me, Lord thing. He's like,
No.
oh yes, of course I'm the right man for this job.
One thing I also want to just get out of the way right now, like, as we said in the book of Exodus, there's like nothing written about Moses' life between being found in the basket and killing the Egyptian.
Right.
Nothing. So there's lots of extra literature around the Bible from Bible scholars, Jewish and Christian and Muslim, who all have ideas about what was going on in Moses' life. But if we're looking at the book of Exodus, none of it's in there. So like every version we watched, this is the place where they all got to play.
Yeah. And
like the relationship between Moses and Ramses, the new pharaoh, for example, is like very similar in many of them, but also really different because none of that's in the book, so they can do it however they want.
Yeah, and the relationship, how they were raised together is always a little bit hand wavy. Like sometimes they were brothers, and sometimes they were like uncle and nephew, and sometimes it's always very unclear because sort of the relationship between the woman who adopted Moses as his mother and the Pharaoh is always kind of unclear. Sometimes she's the daughter, sometimes she's the sister, sometimes she's just there. Okay, so as you were just saying, this film, I think more than almost any other film that we watched, expands a great deal on this sort of interstitial time between Moses being found in the basket and Moses leaving Egypt. It's like an hour. And one of the things that it really stretches out is Moses's relationship with my two favorite characters in this movie. Rather, my two favorite actors. And one I like for good reasons, and one I like because the performance of this actor is so batshit. So I'm going to talk about that one first. The character of Nefertiti is played by an actress named Anne Baxter. And her performance is so incredibly over the top. She is so dramatic. She is so passionate. She's so evil. Everything is just at 110%. With this woman. She wants Moses, but she can't have Moses, but she's very interested in this story of his birth not coming out. She kills the servant that found him in the bulrushes. And my headcanon on it, so Anne Baxter is the same actor who plays Eve Harrington in All About Eve, which was like 5 years before this, or 6 years before. And so my headcanon all the way through watching this, because her the level of dramatics in this performance is very similar. I suspect Anne Baxter maybe only has one thing that she does. So my headcanon all the way through was not that this was Anne Baxter playing the character, but that this was the movie that Eve Harrington left the New York stage to make when she went to Hollywood. And this is Eve Harrington's performance as Nefertiti. And that made it, if you've seen All About Eve, you'll understand what I'm talking about. I've mentioned All About Eve in almost every episode of this podcast, I think. It made it so much more enjoyable. If you haven't seen this movie in a while, go back and watch it with that in your mind, and it's amazing. So that's one. Two, there's an actor in this movie that's actually doing a good job. And that is more than I can say for any other actor in this entire film. And that is Yul Brynner as Ramesses.
Yul Brynner's amazing.
Yul Brynner's amazing. I have no beef with Yul Brynner. So I think the thing about Yul Brynner is he kind of filled an archetype in the time that he was making movies that we don't have now because it's racist. And that was, quote, exotic.
Yeah, totally.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Can I say that? Like, we don't have it now. At least I hope not. But he sort of was of unclear or very diverse racial background, so he could sort of play a lot of different characters. Like he played the king of Siam, and he's playing Pharaoh of Egypt. He's from Russia.
Yeah.
So who knows what's going on there with his appearance, but he's very striking looking. He's very handsome. And he's very good at acting.
Well, I feel like the actor he reminds me of in the way you're talking is like Omar Sharif.
Yeah.
Because he was an actor at that time when like almost every actor working was white.
Yeah.
And now you have an actor that is the other.
Yes.
They are definitely, not only are they perceived as an other, throughout everything they're doing in their stories, they are forced to be the other.
Yes.
But I can just imagine so many, like, specifically white women at the time going, oh, yeah, but Omar Sharif is
Oh, I mean, they did. Like,
dreamy.
in Dr. Zhivago, like that, he was like heartthrob, Omar Sharif.
But because there was just one of them,
Yeah.
it was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, sorry.
Yes. Anyway, he is extremely committed. He is doing his best with a script that at times is not great. And he is a joy to watch. His relationships with the other characters are very clear. His intentions throughout are extremely clear. He's super evil at certain points. He talks a lot about how basically he's going to force Anne Baxter to have sex with him and think about Moses while he's doing it, which is great. And the parts of this film that he is not in are the least enjoyable to watch.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Yes, that's what I have to say about the actors.
I don't have much to say about the actors. I think Charlton Heston's doing a fine job. He has to carry the whole movie. And I think, okay, the movie wouldn't be good if Charlton Heston wasn't good in it. If he was bad, this would be a bad movie.
That's true. We have seen some versions that we're going to talk about where Moses was actively poor.
Like, he has to carry 4 hours of movie. I guess there's not a ton I have to say about it. It's this kind of movie where it's like of its time, so I don't have a ton to say about it. For its time, it looks amazing.
Yeah.
And it's wonderfully staged, and it's a cast of thousands, and Charlton Heston's really good in it.
Yeah, and I think that is why we wanted to talk about this movie first and not like as part of a chronological order, only because like we wanted to acknowledge the importance of this movie, but at the same time we didn't have that much to say about it because it's the kind of thing where it's almost above any kind of critique or discussion because it just is. Like, everyone's so familiar with it. It's almost hard to talk about.
Totally.
But you actually had a bit of a quibble with Charlton Heston's performance.
My biggest quibble is basically Moses is a character who has an arc in the first half of the story.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks he's an Egyptian. He believes that in every fiber of his being, and then he finds out that he isn't, and he finds out he's a Hebrew, and then he goes through a really big thing where he goes from not caring about the Hebrews. Well, he cares about them a little bit because even in this story, he has to be noble.
Yeah.
And then goes to caring about them a lot. So far as that he's going to be a slave.
Yes.
And then he is like full on banished.
Yes.
And this is all before he meets God.
Yeah.
So Moses actually has an interesting arc for the first half of the movie. Then he meets God, and the arc is done.
Yeah.
It's completely gone. Moses becomes the most boring character for the second half of the movie.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's a 4-hour movie.
Yeah, the second half of the movie is very long.
And I think I get what Cecil B. DeMille's trying to do here, because he's trying to make Moses is not the main character of this. The main character is Exodus. The main character is the Bible.
Yeah.
Like, do what the good book says. But I guess the problem I have with that is, if you're going to tell a story and you want it to be compelling, it should have compelling characters.
Yes.
And if Moses isn't compelling, I'm going to say it's not a compelling story. I think the millions of people that love the movie The Ten Commandments would disagree with me, but I can only imagine how popular this movie would have been if Moses was as compelling in the second half as he was in the first.
Right. I mean, the frustrating thing, I think, with what you're saying is, I think in the first half of this movie, it does almost the best job of any that we watched with actually creating compelling characters, because it really takes the time to develop the characters and the relationships and how they all feel about each other and how they all feel about what's going on.
Almost too much time.
Almost too much time, but you know, you sort of almost can't have it both ways, you know? Like, I think the characters in the first half of the movie are compelling. I think the relationships between them are very clear. Their intentions are very clear. It's not just the Bible filmed. There's actually a movie happening where you're not quite sure what's going to happen. But then it becomes the Bible, as you say, in the second half. And it's just like, oh, okay, so we're just going to kind of go through these paces and like do these like tableaus of these things that we've all seen and all heard about a million times.
Totally. I really only have one other thing to say about this movie.
Yeah.
And that is about Joshua.
Joshua.
So I hadn't seen this in years, and when we sat down to watch it, you said pay attention to how many times they say the name Joshua.
Yeah.
It's 37 times.
Did you actually count?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Joshua swings in to almost every scene he's in.
Yeah.
He's like fine in it, but he's like definitely the young heartthrob. When Charlton Heston is like the old heartthrob.
I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know that Joshua, like I knew that Joshua was a biblical character, but I didn't realize this Joshua was that Joshua for a while.
Oh, yeah?
Like, not until we were a couple movies in to this.
Yeah, he's big.
Yeah.
I don't have much else to say about this movie, and we've been talking about it for quite a while.
Yes.
Okay, so that's baseline.
Yeah,
that's baseline 10 Commandments right there. Let's move on to, let's say, the bad.
Yeah.
Okay. In 2007, there was an animated version of the 10 Commandments that came out.
Animated is really giving it almost too much credit.
It is CGI. It is just real bad.
Here's what happened. Jeremy made me watch a 90-minute cutscene from Age of Empires.
It was directed by John Stronach and Bill Boyce. It was written by Ed Naha. It is just shocking in how poor the execution is. It's one of those things where they clearly had like $1,000 to make a full-length CG movie. In 2007, this is the same year that Ratatouille came out. One of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen came out the same year. It was like a new production company that wanted to make like Bible-themed stories.
Yeah, it's the poor man's Veggie Tales.
In 2012, they came out and they did Noah's Ark.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, so let's talk about this cast. Ben Kingsley is the narrator.
I don't understand how they got Ben Kingsley.
Elliot Gould is God.
To which my reaction was, at least there's one Jew in this.
Oh my God. They both came back for Noah's Ark.
Good.
As narrator and God. Michael Keaton was Noah. Here are some other people who are in Noah's Ark. Jason Lee, Jason Mewes of Jay and Silent Bob, Rob Schneider, Marcia Gay Harden, Eliza Dushku, and Howie Mandel.
Okay.
I couldn't even find it anywhere. But as far as the cast goes of this version, I think the only two other people that are worth mentioning, Alfred Molina plays Ramses.
Uh-huh.
I think he's acting the hell out of it.
He's doing his best.
Doing a great job.
He's a professional.
And Christian Slater as Moses.
Oh my God, this did not work for me.
So Moses looks a little different in every version.
Yeah.
Who would you say, like, would you agree that Charlton Heston is like the most strapping Moses?
I mean, he's the Moses.
Right.
He is what you picture when you think of
gray
Moses.
hair, gray beard, and the whole thing.
Streaks in his beard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Robe.
So the Moses in this version looks like that,
Yeah.
except the voice that is coming out of his face is like weaselly Christian Slater voice.
It's awful.
Doesn't work even a little. Like I don't want people to think we're going to spend 40 minutes talking about this movie.
No, we're going to spend like 5 minutes.
I have some specific like call outs about it. Do you have any?
No, I've already said all of the jokes that I wanted to say as you were trying to introduce the movie because I was trying to get through it as quick as possible.
I'm glad I let you do your jokes. Okay, so it's bad. There's a thing that comes up with all of these where, like I said before, there's the Bible and there's the way things quote unquote happened for real, even though this is all parable. Moses has a brother named Aaron who lives back in Egypt, and Moses meets God, and then he, in this version, comes back, and the very first person he meets is Aaron. And Aaron says, I knew to come meet you because God told me. And my reaction is, no, he fucking didn't. The whole point of this story is that God only talks to Moses. He doesn't talk to anybody else. But this is the only way that they could get those two characters together. So that made me mad. But then I realized I'm just like everyone else who's treating this like it actually happened.
I was about to yell at you for that. So I'm glad you have the self-awareness to understand that.
But I think the biggest thing I have to say about this is the way I would characterize this is not a bad script. It's not a great script. But the script actually isn't that bad. It's trying to do things that I responded to. I want to give you an example.
Okay.
So in it, Moses comes to Pharaoh and says, just so you know, God's going to kill like all your kids. He's going to kill all the firstborn of Egypt. And Pharaoh says, go away. And so Christian Slater goes away. And Ramses has a scene with his son. And his son says, is what he's saying true? And Ramses said, of course it isn't. And the son goes, then why am I still scared?
Yeah.
I think that's compelling.
Yeah.
I actually think that's a really, really good line. It was completely undermined by how bad the voice acting was.
And the animation.
Like, this is a movie where the script actually isn't terrible. It's doing the story in a really straightforward way, but it had a couple of interesting moments, but at every single step, the animation and voice acting undermines it completely.
Yeah.
It is the worst version of the Ten Commandments that we watched.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no question.
Certainly the worst animated.
Yeah.
We might say what the worst live action one is.
We're going to say in a minute.
Okay. But that's the Ten Commandments 2007 animated. It is available on YouTube.
Do not watch it.
On the flip side, we have a beautiful, sumptuous, amazingly expensive, well-acted production with the worst script of any version that we watched. And that was 2014's Exodus, Gods and Kings. So this was directed by Ridley Scott, written and produced by, I didn't even write down their names. I literally wrote it as written and produced by a bunch of dudes.
It was a bunch of dudes. We've
watched a lot of stuff for this show. I have had you get mad at me sometimes for making you watch things.
Yes.
This one ranks highly.
Yeah.
What'd you think of Exodus, Gods and Kings?
I was really mad at you for making me watch it. I said several times to you, can I please play Cookie Jam on my phone? Because I can't watch this anymore. And you said no. And I said...
Our listeners want us to be able to talk about it. That is what I said.
And I said, is it over? Probably 14 times. Including like 5 minutes from the end. I was like, dear God,
I have
how
notes,
much longer is this?
Like, I have notes about
this.
this.
I have lots of notes about this.
I want to hear what some of your thoughts are about this movie.
So I want to go back a minute to what I was saying about batshit casting, because this is kind of the flip side of what I was talking about with the Ten Commandments from the 50s. So in that case, I'm not saying this was a conscious thought, but this is because I don't think they thought about it or cared, but in the 50s. But in that case, basically what the filmmakers are positing is, no, this is a movie about white people. This is a place where white people live, and the people in the movie are white. That's their thesis.
Yep.
Right? I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's historically accurate. I'm not saying it's good. But there's a consistency there that you are like, okay, I can see what's happening. In this movie, in 2014, clearly someone trying to be inclusive said, hey, this is a really racially, ethnically diverse area of the world, and would have been back then.
Mm-hmm.
So we should have people in this movie of all races. And maybe those people should really kind of be ethnically what these characters, if they had lived at that time, would have been. So here's what they did. They cast hundreds and hundreds of actors of color as background.
Yep.
They cast, it's just, coincidental, I'm sure, that everyone in this movie with a speaking role, except one, is a white person. But then I think they went, it seems like, we sort of have cast all of our background actors as brown and black people. And we've cast all of our sort of foreground actors who speak lines as, these are white people. So obviously we just need to do something to make it look a little more realistic. This movie is brownface. This entire movie is in brownface. It's very upsetting. I made a joke about how much bronzer Christian Bale was wearing, and then it just got worse and worse and worse and worse as each new character was introduced. I can't get past it. It's really upsetting.
So I'm going to tell you something right now that I think is going to make it more upsetting.
Great.
But I still want to talk about the movie.
Yeah.
Can we still talk about it even though I tell you something that's going to make you feel so much worse?
Yeah, we can still talk about the movie, but I just wanted to put that right out there because I had already talked about it in terms of the 10 Commandments, but I wanted to bring this up as a contrast.
Right. So this is a quote from Ridley Scott.
Oh my God.
So this was something he said because there was criticism leveled at the movie when the casting came out. Because, of course, casting comes out before the movie comes out. And a whole bunch of people were mad. And Ridley Scott, who I feel fine saying this because I love some Ridley Scott movies, but I don't feel that much of a connection to him as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
I don't really care. And he doesn't seem like he's an actively destructive person. Famously, when all the shit went down with Kevin Spacey, he said, well, then fuck you, Kevin Spacey, you're not in my movie anymore. And he went out and reshot every scene with Christopher Plummer, right?
He did do that, yeah.
He's not a bad person. I think he's just kind of an old and stupid person.
Okay.
So this is something he said. I can't mount this was what he was saying to detractors and people who were criticizing him. I can't mount a film of this budget and say that my lead actor is Mohammed so-and-so from such and such. I'm just not going to get financed. That was his defense of the acting. Do you want to let me continue? And that people who are seeking to boycott the movie on such grounds should, quote, get a life. This is what Ridley Scott said.
I have a life. I have a very fulfilling life. And part of that life is to call out extraordinarily racist practices when I see them.
Yep. I don't think Ridley Scott should get away with this. I want to be clear. I think the one saving grace is that this movie did not do well.
Good.
And Ridley Scott was not rewarded for doing this. That's the thing I really like. And I've said this before on the show where people are afraid they're going to make something that isn't accessible for a lot of people and isn't going to be really successful. So they play it really safe. But then it ends up being not successful anyway.
Yeah.
So they could have just done the thing they should have done. They didn't need to play it safe because it was going to bomb no matter what. And maybe if they did a thing where they cast people who were representative of the people who would have lived there at the time, maybe it wouldn't have bombed. But I think it would have because the script is still terrible.
One of the most successful and highly acclaimed movies of 2018, the director cast an unknown indigenous Mexican actress, and she was nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah.
So, you
haven't even seen it. She's fucking awesome.
I'm not going to watch it.
Roma's so good.
I'm not going to watch it.
It's so good.
I'm not going to watch it.
I know. It's really, really good. So here are some, do you have any, what specifics, what are your top couple of specifics you'd like to call out about this movie?
Christian Bale is filthy from beginning to end.
No, that's not true. He's filthy and then it gets worse.
It gets worse. He's physically disgusting.
The dirtiest man I've ever seen in a movie. To me, the high watermark of dirty in a movie is Elijah Wood in the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
He's dirtier than that. No, he's dirtier. At one point it rains and he falls in the sea. and he's still dirty.
Well, that's the whole thing. He's about to meet God, and it just starts pouring. And the way I looked at it was, oh, even God says you need a shower before you need to talk to me. And then somehow after the rain, he's even dirtier than he was before.
I don't know how he stays so dirty.
I don't know what was going on.
From beginning to end, he's dirty.
Oh.
So I think, okay. So you had said to me what you thought Ridley Scott was trying to do with this movie is make it like less about God and more naturalistic.
He was trying to make it feel real.
Yeah.
He wanted to make it feel like, quote, historically accurate.
Yeah. And I will say, I'm going to say the one thing I liked.
Sure.
I liked how he, sort of on that note, I liked how he did the 10 plagues. Because the way that they did the 10 plagues was he came up with sort of a naturalistic, as you say, explanation for the first plague, which is the water turning to blood, which is that there was basically like a crocodile feeding frenzy in the Nile, and the Nile became filled with blood from this event. And there was tons of like dead animals in the water. And there was sort of a natural progression as to what happened next and what happened next. So, of course, okay, the river is full of blood and dead animals, which draws flies and maggots, and those create boils. Like each plague naturally, rather than just being standalone and not related to the other ones, there was sort of a natural progression of why these things were happening. And we were kind of watching it going, how are they going to do the death of the firstborn? Because as you say, like, and there's also a plot line where like the Egyptian magicians are explaining, or the Egyptian prophets and scientists are explaining, this isn't supernatural. It's just the natural thing that happens when there's a lot of flies. They lay eggs and then there's maggots. Like that's what happens. And the death of the firstborn is sort of how you would imagine it. It's sort of like this black cloud that comes over the city, and it's as you've seen it in anything. And my reaction to that was, oh, this is interesting, because the idea is that the Egyptians are sort of explaining away and explaining away and explaining away, and then finally something happens that they can't explain away. Because how could it be that just coincidentally the firstborn of every household dies? Like if it's a plague, everyone's going to die, right? But it's just the firstborn. And that's the thing that convinces them that Moses' God is, you know, powerful and going to smite them or whatever. So I liked that. I liked that idea. I thought it was a good idea.
I was here for that.
Yeah. And it was actually done pretty well.
Well, that's the thing you can say about any Ridley Scott movie. If he's going to do something, he does it well.
Yeah.
He has attention to detail, and he knows how to produce a big movie.
Yeah.
But
just the flip side, what I wanted to say in terms of naturalism, it is a little more naturalistic. You know, obviously, a lot of these were really caught up in all the sort of the interpersonal relationships. And, you know, I guess Ridley Scott was like, well, that's not very interesting, and like maybe not, you know, the story I want to tell. So I guess I'll just get rid of all those pesky women that generally are part of this story and send them off to be banished within the first 20 minutes and never seen again, so that I can just get down to telling what's really important, the story of men.
So we normally, for everyone listening, we normally talk about like the female part is a little underwritten before, kind of saying like, where's it going to come up?
We didn't even talk about it. It was clear.
No, but this is in my notes.
Yeah.
Big bold letters. The female part is a little underwritten.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to bring it up for this one. Women, can you, here's what I would love for you to do. Because I do not want to spend more time on this movie.
No.
Can you, in 1 minute, please express all of the totally legitimate feelings you have about the way women are treated in this movie?
Yes. There are 3 female characters. Moses' adopted mother, Ramesses' mother, Sigourney Weaver.
Yep.
And Moses' sister, Miriam. There is just a very strange, totally out of nowhere, weird subplot where Ramesses' mother is jealous of Moses and knows the secret of his birth and arranges to have him and the Pharaoh's sister / daughter, whoever it is, his mother, and her servant, Miriam, banished after Miriam. Well, Miriam never admits to being Moses' sister, but by this point he believes the story because Ben Kingsley has told him. It's very convoluted. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Ben Kingsley's in this one too.
And so there's this scene where Moses is basically saying goodbye to his mother and the maidservant / his sister who raised him. And I'm turning to you going, I wonder how they're going to get, they're riding off in different directions. I wonder how they're going to get Miriam back into this story. Like, a central female character in Jewish history, the sister of Moses, a prophetess in her own right, who danced with her timbrels with all of the women as they crossed the Red Sea. Very important, very pivotal, very strong Jewish female imagery that we learn about. No, she's just gone. She's gone forever. That's it. That's it. The story of Miriam was not interesting to Ridley Scott.
Like, literally, there are 3 female characters, and they're all in 2 scenes. One of those scenes, they're all in together.
Yes.
And then they all get, like, 1 extra scene, totaling 5 minutes.
Maybe.
And then they're gone.
Gone. Before you move on, I just wanted to... this was the one quote from the movie I wrote down. This was my favorite line in the movie.
Yeah.
So Moses is tete-a-tete with Pharaoh, and he is once again asking him to let his people go. And Pharaoh kind of thinks he's joking, and this is his phrase, and I just love this. I love this line. The Pharaoh said, it's not like, no, because usually you have this image of Pharaoh saying, no, the slaves are my property, or no, I will not let your people go. This very like over the top kind of thing. Here's what Pharaoh says to Moses. From an economic standpoint, what you're asking is problematic, to say the least.
Here's our realistic exodus. That actually goes along with my point, which is the thing that really just made me sad about this movie is that in every facet, it's trying to go for quote unquote historical accuracy. It's trying to make it feel like it would have happened. But the thing is, going back to what I originally said, this didn't happen.
Right.
So I get what you're trying to do. I don't get why you're trying to do it. Who is it serving? What audience is it serving? Like, here's the best example I can think of. I've heard people talk about how, well, let's try to explain what the parting of the Red Sea would have been. Well, it might have been low tide at a really like shallow point of the sea.
Yeah.
And a land bridge opened up that people could go across. I guess I don't understand what the point is of trying to rationalize things that are part of a really important fable.
Yes.
I don't get that. Just let it be the Bible. Don't explain why it happened or how it happened or where it came from. It's a story. And it's a really important story that means a lot to many, many people, but it's a story. So I guess what I'm saying is this movie has no point for existing.
Yeah.
Like none whatsoever.
Yes, I agree with you. Let's talk about the next one.
Yes, I'm done with that. So before we move on to the next 2, I just want to recap really quickly. Those are the 2 bad ones.
Yeah.
And they're bad in different ways. One of them had like a fine script, but terrible production. And the other was the opposite, terrible script, but like really, really good production. Okay. Now we get to the weird ones. Here's the first weird one. So in 2006, there was a miniseries that came out made by Hallmark. It was directed by Robert Dornhelm, written by Ron Hutchinson, who also did The Island of Dr. Moreau,
cool.
the like Marlon Brando one, which is like famously bad. Starring Doug Ray Scott as Moses.
For some reason.
Doug Ray Scott, like, for me, like, famously almost Wolverine Doug Ray Scott. And also, isn't he the prince in Ever After?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, Doug Ray Scott as Moses. It is exceedingly long.
Yeah.
It's
3 hours. We watched 3 hours of this for you. You listening right now, we did this for you.
It is so fucking bad and weird. What? I'm sure you have no notes about this.
I have the most notes of this as for anything.
What do you have to say about this one?
Okay. Again, there's some batshit casting in this, which I won't go into at length. I will just say Claire Bloom is in this, like acclaimed British Shakespearean actress Claire Bloom. Padma Lakshmi is in this of Top Chef.
Omar Sharif, who we talked about.
Omar Sharif, Naveen Andrews, like just really random people in this movie.
Well, this is one of those ones where, like, okay, so here's the thing that's weird about it. Like, very racially diverse cast.
Yes, the only one that we watched like that. I mean, it's got to get a point for that.
I mean,
surely.
Ramses is super white.
Yeah, like literally white. He's very pale.
The most British guy I've ever seen in my life. But as you say, Naveen Andrews is in it.
Yeah.
Can I talk about Naveen Andrews for a second?
Sure, yeah.
So he plays a character named Menereth. So the story is basically the same. Moses is raised by Egyptians, but he's raised and his adoptive brother is not Ramses, but is this other character, this new character, Menereth. This does a couple of things. One, it takes away any relationship between Moses and Ramses.
Yes.
Like none whatsoever.
Ramses literally just appears out of nowhere.
Also, it gives a chance for two of the things that God does to the Egyptians to have a really personal toll on Moses.
Yeah.
So like the death of the firstborn.
Yes.
Well, Menereth has a son.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't.
Yeah.
And he's really mad at Moses.
And at one point he says, yes, there he is, my firstborn. And we both looked at each other and went, oh no.
Like, he defines him as that.
Yeah.
To Moses while he's alive.
Yeah.
And then later, like, Menereth dies in the Red Sea, and Moses is like, this is actually one thing that I thought was good, which is we see Moses going along the shoreline looking at all the Egyptian dead, and then he finds Menereth, and he's grieving over him.
Yeah.
That's a choice. Like, that's an honest-to-God valid choice
Doug
to
Ray
make.
Scott does a lot of weeping and wailing in this movie.
He really does. Well, this is, apart from Doug Ray Scott's, like, performance.
Oh my God, it's so bad.
Like, as a choice, I have a lot of respect for this.
Yeah.
But why not just have it be Ramses? Why not just have his friend? It's just adding more characters to pad out the running time. There's a cliffhanger between the first and the second episode.
Yeah, which you predicted.
Yeah. So the cliffhanger, basically the whole first episode ends with the parting of the Red Sea. All of the Hebrews are now walking across, and Menereth and the rest of the Egyptians arrive, and he has a standoff with Moses where he has a spear pointed at him, and Moses is staring him down, and he's got a staff in the air keeping the Red Sea apart. And then credits. And then we get to episode 2, and they're still looking at each other, and Naveen Andrews just kind of puts his spear down because he loves him so much.
Yeah.
And that's the big cliffhanger.
Yeah. My favorite thing about the fact that this was in 2 parts was we watched them on 2 separate days. But the first hour and a half, as you say, ends with them crossing the Red Sea. So we spent like full 24 hours speculating what they could possibly have to do. In the second 90 minutes, I was like, are they just going to wander for 40 years? Is that what's going to happen? And which is pretty much what happened.
They go places where no other version goes.
Yeah.
This is incredibly violent.
Yes.
It's very dark.
Yeah.
Like, this is the only one that has the Amalekite War
Yeah.
in it, the battle that
Yeah.
that Moses is like leading
Yeah.
against the people of Amalek, and it's very violent and very dark, and all the women get in on the fighting.
Oh, yeah.
Like they get right in with swords and stuff.
Yeah, they don't want to be taken captive.
Like, I feel like if I only talked about the things I liked about it, someone might think, oh, so you're saying this is good? And I would stop them and say, no, don't get it twisted. This is a piece of shit.
Yeah.
This is a terrible, terrible miniseries.
So I just want to go back for a second, if you don't mind.
Okay, yes.
Just to what I was saying before about some of the acting. I mean, again, talk about like bug fuck nuts. The scene where Claire Bloom, again, venerated Shakespearean actress Claire Bloom, has a scene with Padma Lakshmi, who is wonderful as I understand, but her acting is poor.
I think she's acting so pretty.
She's very pretty. She's certainly very pretty.
She's the prettiest acting
But
in the movie.
just the scene of the two of them trying to have a conversation, both in unbelievably bad wigs and very strange eye makeup. The wigs in this are, to a wig, to a hair, terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible. Except Moses's wife, who's not wearing a wig, because of course they have curling irons, in the desert. She has a way to make her hair beautiful every day. She's beautiful hair, because of, again, of course, the curling tongs that they have there.
Yep. There's like a whole chapter in Exodus about the curling tongs, because
Yeah.
God has to give Moses instructions about how to build the curling
Well,
tongs.
he heats them on the burning bush,
Yeah,
of
but
course.
well, no, because it doesn't give off any heat.
Right.
It's burning, but there's no
right.
heat.
That's why it's a blue,
Yeah.
a blue flame.
So what you just said is blasphemous.
Oh, God.
What I said is very funny and accurate.
I want to talk a couple things that happen with Moses's mother, his real mother,
Mhm.
Yocheved. So first of all,
Oh, I didn't even say. Super quick. I'm so sorry. In the animated version, the shitty one we talked about, they kept calling her
Yoga bed.
Yoga bed. It doesn't work. Anyway, I'm so sorry. So he's talking to Yocheved.
yoga bed.
Yep.
It's like a yoga mat, but like a yoga bed.
You sleep on it.
Yeah,
In different positions.
for yoga.
Yeah.
So they clearly tried to up the ante of the scene where the soldiers come for the firstborn of Israel, by making her literally give birth as
I forgot about this.
as the soldiers are like knocking on the door, like literally screaming and giving birth.
Arguably, she is the most badass lady in any version.
She's very badass. And I looked in the original text, it is she hides him for 3 months. So it's not as urgent, but I can see why they would do it that way. Like, it definitely raises the tension.
In this version,
she literally picks him up and runs down to the river, literally with all I could imagine was placenta just dripping down her legs. That's how recently she's given birth.
Which is super badass.
Yeah, I mean,
real badass.
Great. And puts him in the water. Everything is very sad.
Yep.
But then there's this very, very strange interlude where Moses has been raised in the palace. So he's about, 8, 9.
Mm-hmm.
And someone sits him, his mother, Padma Lakshmi, sits him down and tells him the whole story of his birth, which he really rejects. But then they're like, okay, we're going to take you, little Prince of Egypt, on a tour of the slave quarter, I guess. And so they take him to the home of his birth family and introduce him to his father and his mother and his brother Aaron and his sister Miriam. And his mother says to him, his mother is very dramatic actress. And she says, I am your mother. I suckled you at my teat. And she hits her chest and the mic goes, and they didn't redo the shot. She just hit herself in the mic. She's wearing like a lavalier mic and she just hits it with her hand.
The production of this is bad. It's very bad. Just in terms of production, I will say one thing for it.
Yeah.
It is a cast of thousands.
Literal thousands.
Like, there's a lot of people in this movie.
So they're
and it's all shot like on location.
The other thing I want to talk about really quickly, and we may come back to this, is again, talk about like toxic masculinity. Moses's violence is disturbing.
Yeah.
So he kills the soldier who's about to rape, like in this one, they make him about to rape a pregnant woman. It's really horrifying. So he like literally like he doesn't just like punch him or like accidentally push him off something. He takes a rock and he bashes his head in.
And then he does it again.
I wrote down Moses' weapon of choice, a rock. But the other thing I wrote was like, he like hits him and kills him. And the next thing we see is Moses like dragging this man by the feet out into the desert and like trying to bury him. And it's like suddenly Goodfellas. Like, it's just like, what the hell is happening?
So first God gives Moses the instructions for how to build the wood chipper,
yeah.
Then how to put the body in the wood chipper.
That's right. And then at the end,
can I set this up really quickly?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the original story, the Jews wander the desert for 40 years.
Yes.
And one of the reasons they do that is because of the whole golden calf situation. Here's the 10-second version of it. When Moses is getting the 10 commandments, all the rest of the Hebrews are like, fuck, where's Moses? We don't know what's going on. We need a God real quick. So Aaron makes them a golden calf and they all worship it. And God, like, Moses gets back and he's real mad because all these people turn their back on God, like, in an instant.
Yes.
They waited like 5 minutes to turn their back on God.
A day.
And so God says, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make you all wander in the desert for 40 years. So that whole generation of non-believers dies off and all their kids grow up believing in me so that they will believe in me.
Right.
And that's when you'll get to the promised land.
Right.
So that's the whole thing.
Right.
This movie decides to do that a little bit quicker.
Yeah. So what happens is Moses comes down from the mountain and he sees them all worshiping the golden calf and he's very mad. And he says to them, those of you who believe in me, come with me. And some of them do, about half do. And there's these 3 dudes that have been awful the whole time.
There's like a Greek chorus of douchebags in this movie.
One of them has a weird face. And every time we saw him, he's making the same expression. I feel bad. I'm sure this actor is a very nice person, but his face is weird. And about half of them go with Moses and half of them don't. And Moses goes, okay, great. The half of you that aren't with me, God has told me we have to kill them. All of them, including the children. Mm-hmm. And so Moses's faction slaughters.
This is a Hallmark movie.
Slaughters men, women, and children whose only crime was not really to believe in this invisible God that they couldn't see. Oh, and that wasn't even when I wrote the note. I wrote the note when he stoned the man and the woman who committed adultery. And I wrote in all caps, did Moses stone people? Because in this movie, basically, you see because it's the 10 Commandments, you see an incident of each commandment essentially being broken. So you see someone stealing, you see someone committing adultery, you see someone bearing false witness, you see someone, not believing in God, like all those, terrible things that people do. And so there's this subplot of this man and this woman that have this adulterous relationship.
Oh, the silver fox?
Yeah.
The one who looks like like a psychiatrist that went to my synagogue.
Yeah, that's right. And her husband ends up dead because he catches them. And then someone bears false witness to say it was another guy, and the other guy's about to be stoned. And Moses is like, no, I bet it wasn't him. So you think he's going to be very forgiving. And then he has the community stone them to death. That's not in the Bible. It's not. I read it. He doesn't have anyone stoned. Why did they put that in? Well, I was like, this is someone who wants to portray the Old Testament God as violent and set it up in contrast to the forgiveness of Jesus. So I got really mad because I thought it was anti-Semitic. But then you discovered the writer was actually Jewish and really, I guess, trying to tell this story in a new way.
I don't remember specifically if he's Jewish.
Okay.
I just know that some people who were involved in other projects that were like about the Holocaust and stuff like that.
That's fair.
So I do not think this is an anti-Semitic production.
It struck me in a bad way.
Yeah. It's this the biggest thing that I can say about it is it's weird because it's a script that's trying to do things but failing.
Yeah.
But like not failing so badly that it becomes all out bad. Like some of the good ideas are still there and are still good. It is just disturbing. It's incredibly disturbing and very, very weird. I like what they're trying to do. They're failing, but still.
Yeah.
So now to talk about the next weird one, we got to go back in time.
So far.
Literally almost 100 years.
A full 100. So far that this movie is in the public domain.
So I feel like a lot of people know that Cecil B. DeMille's 1956 The Ten Commandments was not the first Cecil B. DeMille's Ten Commandments.
Yes. Because
he made another one in 1923. It was a silent movie. And I feel like we've seen... I actually imagine a lot of people have not seen this.
I had never seen it.
Certainly all the way through. And if people have seen it, anything they've ever seen from it is of Moses and the Hebrews and Pharaoh and Egypt and not the McTavishes.
Yeah, the Moses and Pharaoh in Egypt is like maybe the first half hour.
Yeah.
And then it's all McTavishes.
Okay, so this movie... I didn't know what to expect.
I would love for you to describe this movie.
As you say, the first half hour of this movie is the Ten Commandments, but it kind of starts in media res. So like Moses is already back. He's already talked to God, and it's him arriving back in Egypt to tell Pharaoh, you got to let all these people go. I think it's at the end of the 10 plagues.
Yeah,
right?
It's very like as you would expect. He's got his robes. He looks very Charlton Heston. He's got a long beard.
Older. Definitely older. Old man Moses. And Pharaoh says, okay, you can go. And so the half hour that we see is Pharaoh letting them all go and then racing after them. And we see the parting of the Red Sea and all of the Egyptians die. And then we get the golden calf scene. And Moses comes back with the 10 commandments. And it ends with him basically saying, these are the commandments. These are what you're supposed to live by.
We get each one come down from the sky like in letters of fire.
Right. In English. Then we cut to somewhere and we meet a family. And the rest of the movie is just about this family.
It's just about what happens if you don't obey the 10 Commandments.
And so we get the McTavishes. And there's like the mom and her 2 grown sons. And there's a lady that they both like. And like, it's crazy to me that I'm describing this domestic story of like, well, this one brother really likes this girl, but his other brother likes her too, and he's too much of a good guy, so he lets her. He like buys her, and so there's okay. I'm sorry, I got to go back for a second. Oh
God, okay.
There's the 2 brothers. Yes. One of them's a good Christian, and the other one's not.
He does not believe in the 10 Commandments. He thinks they're old-fashioned.
And they both meet a girl who also doesn't believe in the 10 Commandments, not because she's like actively against them, she just never learned them.
Right.
And there's a scene where the good guy, the good son, is about to propose to her, and he has a ring. And she gets it twisted for a second and thinks, oh, the ring is from the other son. He's asking me to marry him. And this is happening in front of the good son. And his reaction is, yeah, that's what happened. That's what happened. And he takes a step back to let her be with his brother, who also has feelings for her. That's how good a person he is.
Yes.
that's bearing false witness. Like, that is breaking. I was keeping track of this in the course of the movie. Like, the quote unquote good son, like, if you're gonna say that the 10 Commandments are things you have to live by, don't show your main characters who are supposed to abide by them breaking them. It's fucking bullshit. I hate that. It's sanctimonious crap, and I don't like it.
Well, I think so. There's like, I read a little bit about this movie on Wikipedia, and so basically the idea is that they're trying to show that the correct path is sort of this middle path where you believe in the 10 Commandments, but you don't adhere to them at the sacrifice of like casting out those who don't believe.
Yeah. Which is not what he does.
No, that's what their mother does.
Right.
The mother is very strictured. She's strictured with the scriptures. The mother is the one who's like, well, if you don't believe in the 10 Commandments, you can get out from under my roof. And that her son is led astray, sort of. And we're sort of given to understand that had he stayed in the good influence of his brother, he might have come around. But instead, he was cast out. So his way is not the good way, but the mother's way is also not the good way. It's the older brother's way.
Can I say how they're
correct
punished?
Way. Yes, you can say how they're punished.
The shitty son builds a crappy cathedral and it falls on his mom. And the 10 Commandments fall on her and crush her and kill her.
Yeah.
He's super fucked up.
That's what happens.
It's real sad.
It's very sad. And then he goes to jail.
Yep.
And then the other brother marries his wife.
Yep.
And presumably puts her back on the path of the 10 Commandments.
It's like, it's a nothing story.
It's just batshit. It's very strange. It's like not like you could be forgiven if you didn't know anything about it to like get to the end of the first half of the movie or like the first quarter of the movie and be like, I thought this was the 10 Commandments. What did they just tack on at the end? Like another hour of this weird family.
Well, there's no proof better that the second, I'm going to say half, the second section of this movie that is the majority of it is so forgettable that 30 years later when the same director remade it, he just turned the first half hour into a 4-hour movie.
Right.
Like
he abandoned the McTavishes.
And I didn't read a single thing about anyone who like saw the original when they were a kid and then went to go see the new one and were like, yeah, no, I mean, it's good and Charlton Heston's good, but Cecil, where the fuck are the McTavishes?
Yeah.
This is bullshit and you're bullshit and I'm done. I'm going back to church. I don't have much else to say about that one, but it's weird.
It's weird. I don't know. That's one I would recommend watching if you're interested. It's I think it's on Amazon Prime or something.
Oh, and it's legitimately a part of film history.
Yeah, it's
like,
fun.
It is super, super fun.
Yeah.
And if you really like the Charlton Heston version, definitely see it. Because like there's stuff from that first hour, that first half hour that looks like it's like shot for shot remake in the 1956 version.
Well, even just his costume and his look is really, really similar of Moses.
Totally. So that's it. Those are all the versions that we have.
Not correct.
We had some bad ones. What are you talking about? We had some bad ones and we had some weird ones.
No.
And that's it.
We watched one that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It had songs. It's a cartoon. Jeremy had never seen The Prince of Egypt.
Nope.
I don't understand.
It just felt like it was so on the nose.
What was your reaction to seeing The Prince of Egypt for the first time? Let me ask you this. Of all the movies that we watched, you know, it's a touching story. Woman's giving up her baby and there's murder and there's, you know, people having crises of faith and all this stuff. It's emotional. Which one of these versions made you cry?
This one.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue on this line of questioning.
All right.
At what point did it make you cry?
Immediately.
Almost immediately.
Immediately. Started crying immediately, and it made me cry many more times over the course of the movie. Here's the short version. This movie's beautiful and amazing, and I loved it, and it's the best one, and I'm mad that I haven't seen it for 20 years.
I would watch this every day. I love The Prince of Egypt.
I watched it twice before that we recorded this.
Yeah.
Like, I had to watch it again yesterday. I loved it so much.
Didn't you watch it with all the commentary?
Yes.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved it. It's so good. Holy shit, it's so good.
Okay, can we talk about why?
No, I just want to keep saying how good it is.
Okay. First of all, the songs are excellent. The songs are by Stephen Schwartz, who wrote Godspell and Wicked. He's very good. I like them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are really good.
I love this movie so much. I have nothing to say about it. I just love it.
I know the songs are like the most important thing for you.
Yeah, the songs are great.
I want to start at the beginning.
Okay.
So one of the things that these movies do that again keeps frustrating me is they keep trying to say, here's the real story. Like, almost all of them, I imagine some character, there's going to be like a prologue where some character is going to turn to another and it's years later and they say, oh, well, I know the story of Moses. And they say, yes, but you don't know the real story of Moses. Come, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Let me tell you the story. That's what they all feel like. They're
Right.
all trying to say, like, this is the real story. This is one of the only ones that's actually humble enough to stand up and say, can I actually read what's on screen at the beginning?
Yeah, there's like a little disclaimer at the beginning, and you were like almost cried at this point. Like you really liked it.
No, I was crying.
Yeah.
This made me cry.
Okay, go ahead.
The motion picture you are about to see is an adaptation of the Exodus story. While artistic and historical license has been taken, we believe that this film is true to the essence, values, and integrity of a story that is a cornerstone of faith for millions of people worldwide. The biblical story of Moses can be found in the book of Exodus. It's very honest, it's very straightforward, and it does everything that I've been complaining. It does the opposite of everything that I've been complaining about this whole episode, which is the book of Moses, the story of Exodus is in the Bible.
Yeah.
It's there. Go read it. You don't need to read other stuff if all you want to get out of it is what's in the Bible. That's totally fine. But we're not going to pretend that this doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people. We're not going to pretend that there's one historical way that this needs to be told. We are going to be really upfront and say, we're telling one that we think is honest to the spirit of it and to the essence of it.
Yes.
And what that also allows for is for me as a Jew to watch a story of, quote unquote, a story of my people and feel a connection to it because it's not being told by Christians who are telling it in the context of their faith.
Yes.
I think that's really harsh what I just said.
No, I don't think that's harsh.
I just want any Christians who are listening, like I know we have listeners who are of the Christian faith. You're my friends. Like, I'm super cool with it. That's really great. But also, this is a story of my people too.
I think every Jew is a little bit salty about every time they've heard the Ten Commandments called an Easter movie.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. One of my notes is that this movie is so Jewish.
yeah.
It's unbelievable. Like, okay.
Except for the casting.
I mean,
Just Jeff Goldblum.
yeah. So like, this is produced by Steven Spielberg and Jeffrey Katz. There's a point in the commentary where the directors, who we'll definitely need to talk about, are talking about like the way one of the sequences is staged, and one of them says, so this was actually Steven's suggestion, and then they move on, and like 2 minutes later he goes, I want to be clear, I'm talking about Steven Spielberg right now. That's like a really crappy way to name drop someone. I am talking about Spielberg. There was a lot of Jewish stuff in this movie.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, no, I was just going to say Jeff Goldblum sort of playing the role that I played in my high school production of Fiddler on the Roof, the token Jew.
Which is why the version of Fiddler that I was in high school, I mean, I played Tevye.
Yeah, I know.
That was a very authentic production.
It was great.
Got a real Jewish kid with a real beard.
A real beard. We had a kid with a real beard in ours too.
Really?
Yeah, he was only in 10th grade. He grew a beard.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ah.
They always have to cast the manliest kid as Tevye.
Right, because I'm very manly. Okay, so I don't know where to start with this.
Okay.
Can we talk about the directors?
Yeah.
One thing that's nice about this, so it's 3 directors. Steve Hickner, Simon Wells, who is the great-grandson of H.G. Wells.
Great.
Who also directed a version of The Time Machine.
Of course he did.
That I went to go see in theaters. And Brenda Chapman, who is notable for a couple of reasons. One, she's a lady.
It's great.
And as you said, this story is full of really important female characters for, like the history of Judaism, right?
Yeah.
So we've got a lady telling the story, which is great.
Yes.
She also was the co-director of Brave.
Ah.
I say co-director, that's kind of the shittiest way to phrase it. She was the director and then butted heads with John Lasseter, who we have now found out is kind of a shithead.
Great.
And then she got fired because they butted heads.
Great.
And I have a lot of respect for how salty she isn't about that. She's been pretty cool about the whole thing, while also not holding back that the reason she was off it had nothing to do with the quality of her work.
Yes.
Can I read a quote really quickly about her time at Pixar?
Sure.
That I found that I just thought was really fascinating. So there's a guy named Joe Ranft who worked at Pixar who was really great. Sadly, he died in a car accident. She says, and then I got a call from a dear friend of mine, Joe Ranft, the late, great Joe Ranft, and he was their story guru up at Pixar. He was working on Cars, and he called me to see if I could come and help them figure out the female characters because they were having trouble. But I got there too late, I think. I didn't really have any impact on that. So if anyone has any complaints about the female characters in Cars,
It's not her fault.
Brenda Chapman did her best. But then she started doing Brave,
Yeah.
and Brave is very good.
I haven't seen it.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's definitely good.
I'd like to see it.
I think it would have been better if she had stayed on it.
Yeah.
So that's the directors. someone who worked on the screenplay, he got like additional story credit for it. Someone who's been mentioned on this show before.
Okay.
Nicholas Meyer.
Oh gosh.
Who wrote and directed
It's dear to your heart.
Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, my favorite movie. Do you want to talk about the cast?
Do you know who's in this movie?
Who's in this movie?
Patrick Stewart.
He is in this movie.
I love Patrick Stewart. Okay, Patrick Stewart's in this movie. Helen Mirren is the queen, and Patrick Stewart is the old pharaoh. Seti. Moses is played by Rafe, right? Of the Fiends? Joseph of the Fiends?
Val of the Kilmers.
Val of the Kilmers. Wait, who's Rafe Fiennes? Oh, he's Ramesses.
He's Ramses,
okay.
Yeah.
And then we have as Miriam, Sandra Bullock, and as Aaron, the aforementioned Jeff Goldblum, who's very funny.
Yep. Can I just say a quick thing about Miriam in this movie?
Yes.
This is, I want to say this, and I hope this doesn't sound too weird. One of the things that's great about this movie is the fact that the way they draw all the characters does make it certainly feel more authentic to the place and the time. The characters don't just look like a bunch of white people.
No, they don't.
Which is good.
They're voiced by a bunch of white people.
So, like, baby steps.
Yeah.
Like, we're making progress
Danny
on
Glover's
everything.
in this movie.
He is. One thing that I really liked about Miriam is she looked like so many Jewish women that I know.
Yeah, she looks like every Jewish woman. She's short. She's kind of got a big butt and curly hair.
Like, this movie's so Jewish.
Yeah.
It is so Jewish. I felt seen. I felt really seen watching this movie.
You felt seen that Miriam's body type was stereotypically Jewish? I felt seen.
Yeah. But please continue.
Danny Glover plays Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, and his wife, Zipporah, is played by Michelle Pfeiffer.
Moses' wife.
And who did I say?
You just said his wife.
Oh, Moses' wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who is Jethro's daughter.
Jethro's daughter. But the cool thing is that Jethro's singing voice is Brian Stokes Mitchell. And he sings my favorite song in the movie, which is Through Heaven's Eyes. And it's a very good song. It's the song they sing when Moses comes to live with the nomadic tribe in the desert and marries Zipporah. And it's very good.
This was the third time I cried in the movie.
Yes.
I can like literally count all the times.
Yeah, no, that doesn't surprise me.
I remember the first. Here's 4 times that I cried.
Okay.
So opening, like the whole putting the baby in the basket thing is beautiful and heartbreaking and amazing, and the entire the entire song is sung by his mother Yocheved,
yes,
who's voiced by Ofer Haza,
yeah,
who's an amazing singer.
Yeah.
That whole thing made me cry. It was great. Then when he meets Miriam, they really jump through the story really fast.
Yeah, because they kind of put it all in that opening song almost.
Yeah, but also even after that, like they do a thing where Zipporah, he doesn't actually meet her once he gets into the desert. He meets her much earlier.
Yeah.
Because she's been kidnapped as a slave, and he kind of helps her escape.
Yes.
He doesn't so much help her as he doesn't
stop her.
He sees that she's escaping and doesn't stop her.
Right.
But while he's chasing her through the city, just because he wants to talk to her, she gets away, but he interacts with Miriam and Aaron, and Miriam's immediately like, Moses, holy shit, you're down here. You must be down here because you know.
Yeah.
You're finally here to talk to us. I'm your sister. And then she sings like a little bit of the song that Ofer Haza sang at the beginning.
Yeah.
And this was actually beautiful. I found this out later. Did I tell you about this?
I don't think so.
Do you know who the singing voice? So Miriam, all the characters have like a speaking voice and a singing voice. So Sandra Bullock is the speaking voice. She does have a singing voice later. But in this song, they weren't super happy with the singing voice's performance of this lullaby.
Okay.
So it's actually Brenda Chapman.
Oh, that's cool.
They like kept the scratch track. And like she had to be convinced. She said she characterized it as losing the vote because she was outvoted by the other directors who said, no, this has to be you. And it's beautiful. That made me cry. Then Through Heaven's Eyes made me cry. Holy shit. I fucking love this movie so much. It's so good and beautiful and wonderful.
I'm glad we kind of started with one we couldn't really talk about, and we are now ending with one that we can't really talk about for different reasons.
I love it so much. Oh my God, it's so good.
And then was the last time you cried?
Just the whole...
At the end.
What's the final big song? The Mariah Carey.
Deliver Us. Or no, There Can Be Miracles.
Yeah.
When You Believe. When You Believe.
Yeah, When You Believe. Not the Mariah Carey version.
No.
The Mariah Carey Whitney Houston version, but the actual like diegetic version of it in the movie.
That Zipporah and Miriam sing.
Yeah.
Again, talk about like female characters actually like driving the story. They sing the most important song in the movie.
Mm-hmm. So good.
Yeah.
So good. That was great. One of my notes are useless on this.
Yeah.
One of my notes is fucking loved it. Like, what's that? I have to do a show about this. That's a useless note past me. That's really dumb. Here are my notes. Fucking loved it. Next bullet point, cried immediately. Next bullet point, so Jewish. This is useless.
Well, we've hit all those points.
But my next one I do want to talk about.
Okay.
The way this is handled in all of the movies is varied, I
Yes.
will say. I want to talk about the death of the firstborn.
Gotcha.
Okay. We've both now read Exodus.
Yes.
How would you characterize Moses' reaction to the death of the firstborn in the book of Exodus?
He doesn't really have one.
Right.
Like we aren't told. It is not handed down to us.
Looking back over all the versions that we've talked about, how would you, like, what are some different ways, because I feel like I can do this, what are some ways you would characterize his reactions to the death of the firstborn?
In some cases he's a little bit bloodthirsty.
Yeah.
Charlton Heston.
Yep. Like, Charlton Heston was kind of cool with it.
Yeah.
He was like, you deserve this.
Yeah.
You deserve this, and God's going to kill your kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doug Ray Scott's like
weeping and wailing again.
Well, he's weeping and wailing, but only because of the one kid.
The one kid. Yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. He doesn't really care about the other ones. Exodus, I don't really remember. I think I tuned out by that point.
He kind of just ignores it.
Yeah.
And that's the other way that it's handled, which is I can imagine that these folks, as filmmakers, were saying, we actually can't show his reaction because our story is presenting the death of the firstborn as a good thing, but anyone watching this knows it's a bad thing. So we're just not going to have Moses react at all, and we'll move on from there.
Right. Well, but the cool thing in this version, and I think maybe this is what you're going to say, is that, so taking it back a tiny bit, Moses has this song called All I Ever Wanted, which is right after he meets Aaron and Miriam, and he's sort of coming to terms with what they've told him and coming to believe it. And it sort of ends with him seeing a mural in the palace that he's seen a million times and never realized what it was before. And what it is this huge depiction of the Egyptian soldiers throwing the Jewish babies to the alligators.
Mm-hmm.
And you see him realize what it means and realize that the story he's been told is true, and you see him devastated. And this movie, this cartoon DreamWorks film, is the only one that draws a direct parallel between the way Moses feels at that moment when he's learning about the deaths of the Jewish firstborn and the way he feels when the Egyptian firstborns are killed. He's also devastated, but in the same way.
Yeah.
He's just as upset.
Like when he comes to Ramses and says, here's the deal. We've done all the plagues. You've seen all that God can do. I'm telling you right now, like the next thing that's going to happen is going to be terrible. I can't stop it from happening. The only person who can stop it from happening is you, and you've got to let everybody go.
Yeah.
Please do this. You have to, because the results will be terrible. And God is set up in this as like a force of nature.
Yeah.
God is elevated above everybody else, and even elevated above Moses at that point in a way that's appropriate for the story.
Yes.
And Moses isn't really part of it. Moses actively doesn't want it to happen.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like in other ones, Moses has a very kind of inevitable feeling about it.
Yeah.
Like, well, this is going to happen. And even in the story, like, God keeps saying, I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart, and he's going to say no, and then I'm going to do this to him. And so Moses knows it's going to happen. In this one, he genuinely thinks that there's a chance that it won't happen.
Yeah.
And then it does, and he has to go talk to Ramses, and Ramses is there with the body of his son. And when Moses leaves and just breaks down crying and sinks down like against a wall.
Yeah, just exactly the same. It mirrors the earlier scene.
It's beautiful and just nuanced from a character perspective that none of the other versions did.
Yeah, and I will say too, one thing that I observed in a lot of these versions is they're clearly trying, again, everyone is really trying to lift some of this responsibility for this horrible thing that happened off of Moses, our main character that we're supposed to like.
Yeah.
So in many versions, what they do, and this is not in the source text, what they do is they have Pharaoh say, when Moses goes to Pharaoh for this last time to sort of plead for them to go before the 10th plague hits, they have Pharaoh say, not only no, but I'm going to kill every Jewish firstborn. And then Moses just goes, oh my God, you don't know what you've just done. Like, you have just sealed your own fate, because anything that you threaten is going to be turned around on you. So they make it like Pharaoh's fault, like as if God either gets this idea from Pharaoh or God must somehow inevitably do the thing that Pharaoh threatened to do. Like it must happen. And that's the way they kind of get around Moses / God, who are the good guys, being responsible for this bad thing.
And that's how it happens in Exodus, because God does say, just like Pharaoh did, I'm going to kill all the firstborn.
Yes.
But he tells Moses this before he even goes back to Egypt.
Yeah.
So like it's in there, but yeah, not in this way where they're trying to let them off the hook, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved this movie. I do have a sir not appearing in this film.
Great.
Yeah, here at this late stage.
Yeah, go for it.
Joshua does not appear in
No,
The Prince of Egypt.
That's okay.
He's such a delightful character.
Joshua.
Oh man, I guess I think I only have one last thing to kind of talk about with all of these.
Okay.
And we've already talked so much about how Moses is treated as a character to various levels of success.
Yeah.
I think Prince of Egypt, Moses is the strongest representation of a compelling character that you care about and are interested in and care for and are afraid for the entire movie.
Yeah.
I think Charlton Heston, that version is good about halfway.
Yeah.
And then he's not a character anymore. Now he's just a placeholder for the religious text.
Yeah.
And then in some of them, it's just bad and he's nothing and he's Christian Slater.
Or Doug Ray Scott.
Yeah. Well, even that one was interesting.
No, I would have to say Doug Ray Scott was my least favorite performance of all of them. I thought it was just abysmal.
Doug Ray Scott was my second favorite performance.
Second favorite?
Second favorite. I enjoyed watching him do it more than Charlton Heston because at no point was Doug Ray Scott's portrayal boring.
Okay, that's fair.
Like,
it was not predictable.
You cannot say that about that movie at all.
I guess.
It's never boring. It's always interesting.
I guess that's fair.
It's not good,
Yeah.
but it's interesting. So we've talked a lot about Moses.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the big guy.
Yeah. Man upstairs.
I am that I am.
Yes.
And I want to talk about this not because not to talk about how'd the burning bush look in all of them. But one thing that they all had to do is they all had to present the voice of God.
Yes.
In different ways.
Yes.
They all handle it a little differently. So do you have any in particular that you thought were just not successful the way they wanted it to be?
Yeah. In 2014 in Exodus, Gods and Monsters,
that's different.
They tried to go avant-garde with it, I think, and it did not work for me. I don't know if it worked for you.
It didn't work for me.
But basically they put God in the form of a creepy child that followed Moses around and spoke to him. And at the beginning, I kind of liked it because my idea, not supported by the movie, but my idea was that it was like his younger self.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping for.
Yeah, but I don't think it was. I think it was just a creepy child.
And also a boy.
And a boy. Yeah. It didn't work. It was in it too much to work. It was either too much or not enough or something. It just didn't work. They were trying to be very, as I say, kind of avant-garde in this movie that proclaimed how naturalistic it was.
Yeah.
That did not work for me at all.
That didn't work. And also the final scene between the two of them is when for the 40 days that Moses is carving the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
They felt like roommates.
Yeah, it was really, they were kind of bickering.
Yeah.
And then that movie, by the way, is 2.5 hours long. And they get through a great deal of plot in literally the last 3.5 minutes. It is very strange.
Yeah, Moses ages 100 years really quickly.
Anyway, let's not talk about it anymore. So that God didn't work.
He's just in the thing with the Ark of the Covenant being 1,000,000 years old. By the way, I totally watched Raiders of the Lost Ark in the middle of doing this whole thing.
Good.
It's great. My biggest recommendation is if you're going to watch 7 versions of the 10 Commandments, end it with Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Just as a dessert.
So good. The one that I thought was least successful was Elliot Gould in the crappy animated version that we watched.
For any particular reason?
Just the most entirely inappropriate casting I've ever seen.
You think so?
He just sounds like a New York Jew.
He does sound like a New York Jew. For sure.
There's nothing. It's just like Christian Slater being Moses. There's nothing about their voice that lends itself to that character.
Yeah.
At all.
My favorite miscasting in that way was in Exodus, John Turturro as the Pharaoh, with his Italian New York accent, John Turturro.
And yet I found him compelling. I thought he was one of the more interesting people in it.
I didn't think he did a bad job acting.
Yeah. Just a choice.
Just a very strange choice.
Yeah. Then I think you've got the middle ground where you've got the 10 Commandments, 1956. The voice of God is Charlton Heston.
Yeah.
And I feel like the reason for that is because even Charlton Heston would agree if God is going to sound like anyone, it's going to be Charlton Heston.
For sure.
And that's, I think, where their choice came from, because people can debate this, but I think their choice for having Charlton Heston be the voice of God is that, well, of course Charlton Heston should be the voice of God because he's Charlton Heston. In Prince of Egypt, Val Kilmer also does the voice of God.
Yes.
So they made the same choice, but I think for very, very different reasons. Like I said, in 56, do it because it's Charlton Heston. In Prince of Egypt, they made the decision because it's Moses.
Right.
And if God's going to talk to anyone, God doesn't have a voice. So God is going to sound to you in the most personal way possible, which is going to be your own voice.
Yeah.
And I like what that's setting up, that we never hear anybody else hear God, but I like that it's setting something up where anyone would just hear their own voice.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
They actually they experimented with having it be like a layered effect of all the voices of people from his life.
Ooh.
And what they found when they tested it was that it sounded amazing, but no one was actually listening to what God was saying.
Yeah.
Because it sounded too cool.
Yeah.
So they dialed it back and said, okay, we'll do the thing that they did in 56, but we're going to do it for a better reason.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
that was my favorite.
Yeah.
Like, as in terms of a depiction of God, that one was my favorite.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
Great. Well, let's turn to our quadrants.
Oh, God. Yeah, we have so many to go through.
So many to go
Let's
through.
do these in chronological order.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like it's going to be weird where the source material of 23 is Exodus.
Yeah.
But then after that, the source material is like
The Ten Commandments.
The Ten Commandments.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Okay, so Ten Commandments, 1923. Do you think Cecil B. DeMille cares about the Bible?
I think so, yeah.
Like a lot,
Yeah, a
right?
lot.
Is it successful?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
It really isn't. Like, I mean, it is. It's not bad at all.
It's not bad.
It's very successful and inspired 100 years of filmmaking.
Yes.
Okay, then 1956. Did Cecil B. DeMille care about the source material?
Again, yes.
Now being both his original movie
Yes.
and the Book of Exodus.
Yes.
And is it successful?
Obviously.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously, it stood the test of time.
It's really good. It's really, really good.
It's okay.
Then we have 2006's The Ten Commandments starring Doug Ray Scott. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Fuck no.
No.
Of course not.
Like, I think the writer did. The writer is the only person who I think was doing any work
Yeah.
because they found something in the source material they responded to.
Yeah.
But also, it sounds like they were just, it feels like they were just trying to do something that was the opposite of the 1956 version.
Yeah, they were just like, at every turn, they were like, we're going to make a different choice.
Yeah. And is it successful?
No.
Fuck no. Like, no. I liked some stuff in it, but no.
But no.
2007, Ten Commandments animated version. Did they care?
No.
No. Is it successful?
No.
No. 2014's Exodus, Gods and Kings. Did they care? Like, famously not.
Yeah, no.
Like, he doesn't give a shit about the source material.
Well, and
he wants to
also-
do a big a sword and sandals epic.
Right. And if he had come out and said, I love the Ten Commandments, it was one of my favorite movies growing up, it really spoke to me and I wanted to do a new version of it, I would count that as caring about the source material.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the case either.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I really don't think so. I think this feels like it's Ridley Scott by default.
Yes.
He was looking for a project and someone said 10 Commandments and he was like, yeah, that sounds that's on brand for me.
Sure.
And is it successful?
No.
No.
No. Hell no.
And we jump back in time a little bit to 1998 to DreamWorks, The Prince of Egypt.
Yes.
Did they care about the source material?
I mean, honestly, I think they were the only ones that actually traveled to Egypt to do research.
Yeah.
Like, we saw a little featurette. They traveled to Death Valley to learn about, like, how wind moves and through the sand, and they went to Egypt. Like,
They talked, so in Cecil B. DeMille, like, made a big deal of the fact that he talked to, like, Bible scholars.
Yeah.
And even a rabbi, as we said, about making it, but we didn't really see that borne out in the movie.
right.
In this one, they talked to Christian leaders, they talked to Jewish leaders, they talked to Muslim leaders because Moses is important to all three of those
Yes.
faiths. There was a scene where when Moses kills the Egyptian, in the movie, the Egyptian is attacking just an old man. In their script originally, he was attacking Miriam.
Mm-hmm.
And their whole thinking was, well, the thing that's going to get Moses in is that he's saving someone who's family to him.
Mm-hmm.
He is accepting his love for his family. And they said how they talked to Reform, conservative, Orthodox Jewish leaders. And the one thing they all completely agreed on was, no, it can't be Miriam. Of course it can't be Miriam. Because this isn't
Because anybody would save their sister. This has to be him saving someone he has no relationship to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was something I really appreciated.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is evidence to, yes, they absolutely cared. Is it successful?
By far the most successful. Put it all the way up in the corner.
Like, this is the best version of a compelling character of Moses and this story that I have ever seen. I'm really mad that I had never seen this until now, and that is where I am at.
The end.
Well, this has been Adapter Parish. If you'd like to find us online, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AdaptCast. And if you tweet about the show, don't forget to use the AdaptCast hashtag. You can join our groups on Facebook and Goodreads, and you can also find and follow me on Letterboxd. If you have anything to say that's longer than a tweet, you can always send an email to adapterparishcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, there are 2 great ways you can do it. First, tell a friend. Second, a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice would always be greatly appreciated. It really helps with visibility of the show, and we appreciate it so much.
Die, Dainu, die, Dainu, die, Dainu, 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 die, Dainu, die, Dainu, die, Dainu, Dainu, Dainu.
How long are you going to go?
I mean, I can start with Hava Nagila.
That's not Goodbye, everybody. Happy Passover.
Bye.